Good day there once again, viewers. This is your mate Kamikaze78 here, coming to you guys with some more Planetside 2 content. Today guys, we're going to be getting back into some more weapon reviews. Last time we looked at the recently implemented Charger Carbine for the NC, which we found to be a little but now we're shifting from to wow, and we're going to be taking a look at the TR's newly implemented carbine, the MG-C1 Kindred. And if that isn't a spoiler alert as to the verdict that is coming, I really don't know what is. As you guys know here, when it comes to my weapon reviews, we always kick things off by taking a look at some of the stats, followed up by discussing some weapon-specific strategy that you can make use of, and looking at some of the attachment options that the gun can carry, / which ones are best suited for the performance of the weapon overall. Before we get much further guys, I must quickly just say that I am still feeling a bit under the weather right now, so if you're noticing a bit of a nasally sound on my voice, that is why. I hope you guys can bear with it for the duration of this video. But formalities aside, I know that there are also a fair few of you out there who really don't have the time to sit through a 10-minute plus review of a gun in a video game, so we'll do a quick TLDR of the gun to see what you can expect out of this little beastie here. So, being a TR soldier, I'm sure that you have, at some point during your travels, come across some jackass on the new conglomerate side of things using a cyclone and proceeding to tear you to absolute shreds. I mean, I'm pretty sure anyone who has ever fought the NC has been taken out by a cyclone at least once in their lifetime, and hasn't turned been pretty bloody annoyed about it. I mean, it is kind of the weapon from the NC that makes even the most loyal TR and VS consider turning blue, but for my TR compadres, I come bearing some good news. Your mad TR scientists have given you something on the same level of insanity, the Kindred. This TR carbine has a unique mechanic that sees it firing the first 7 rounds of every burst at a faster firing rate before returning to a slower firing rate. Every time you pull the trigger with the weapon, you'll get a 7-round burst fired at 698 rounds per minute. So, if you ever know how to burst your weapon properly, you can really maximize your potential here. However, it gets better. The weapon fires a slightly higher caliber of round when compared to most of your other TR carbines of the batch, seeing it pull a similar damage model to that of a said Cyclone. So what we're talking about here is a high-end damage model on a ridiculous rate of fire for that kind of damage model when you burst the weapon properly. This means that yes, you are looking at a better DPS than the Cyclone. Yeah, the glorious Cyclone. TR, you have been granted a machine here. Burst this weapon properly and you, my friends, have got yourself one of the better weapons in the game right now. However, this does come with the caveat of needing to burst it properly, and with that there is a bit of a learning curve here that you need to get your head around in order to use it like you would your other close quarters TR carbines. But say you're interested in some more in-depth stats, well, let's dive straight into what exactly makes the Kindred what it is. Starting off with the damage model, the weapon carries out a brutal 167 maximum damage at the 10 meter mark and falls off to a 125 minimum damage at the 70 meter mark. So the weapon does drop 2 damage tiers, but it does do this over a fairly considerable distance, which sees it still able to dish out some decent damage at distances, but we'll talk a bit more about that in the long run. It's still not recommended really for that kind of range, but again, more on that later. The weapon is capable of nailing a target in 6 shots within the 10 meter mark, 7 shots to kill a target within the 11 to 40 meter mark, and finally 8 shots to kill a target at the 70 meter mark. Now, shifting our attention to the most interesting part of the weapon, the rate of fire. As I said in the TLDR segment of the video, this weapon will fire at an increased rate of fire of 698 rounds per minute for the first 7 shots every time you pull the trigger, returning down to 550 rounds per minute afterwards. Now, I'm going to be the first person in the world to admit that I'm no mathematical sleuth, but that's a pretty fucking significant difference. To put that into raw theoretical time to kill stats for argument's sake, your potential theoretical time to kill is 0.43 seconds at the 10 meter mark and 0.52 seconds at the 40 meter mark. However, if you're engaging with the standard rate of fire, your time to kill is 0.55 seconds at the 10 meter mark, 0.66 seconds at the 40 meter mark, and 0.77 seconds at the 70 meter mark. As I said, that's a significant difference in firepower there. Now, one thing I want to quickly clear up here, because the weapon can nail a target in 6 shots within 10 meters and 7 shots within 40 meters, the accelerated rate of fire period can only dish out enough bullets to murder a bloke within those ranges, as it only fires 7 rounds when accelerated. Beyond 40 meters, it takes 8 shots to down a guy, thus throwing you outside of the accelerated rate of fire for 1 shot. As a result, the time to kill is a little impossible to calculate for this range with the accelerated rate of fire in mind. Mind you, there is still obviously going to be an improvement to the time to kill at these extended ranges if you're bursting properly. It's just a little bit too hard for my tiny brain to actually go ahead and calculate. In short, the potential firepower of the weapon is just plain solid. The question remains, however, does this come at the cost of handling? When it comes to the recoil of the weapon, it's statistically not the most stable weapon of the batch. There's a pretty strong vertical kick per shot, and the weapon carries a varied horizontal recoil shake that isn't at all consistent. And on top of that, it's also featuring a fixed recoil angle that will pull the weapon towards the left-hand side bias constantly. However, as we were mentioning earlier, to make the most of this gun, we're going to want to be bursting it quite a bit to get the maximum rate of fire potential, which means you're going to come across the devilish first shot multiplier more than you may like. Keep that in mind when using the weapon. You are going to be dealing with some significant vertical recoil kick, which will be noticeable at longer ranges. Now, to those interested in the nitty-gritty stats, the vertical recoil sits in at 0.32 degrees per shot and gets hit by a 2.5 times first shot multiplier every time you decide to start a new burst, which takes it up to an effective recoil of 0.8 degrees. Now, when it comes to that horizontal recoil side of things, this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. The weapon features a 0.18 degree to 0.26 degree horizontal kick range per shot, and while there isn't a horizontal recoil tolerance stat available at the moment, the weapon appears to only kick horizontally once in a direction past the center point before being kicked in the opposite direction. In other words, the weapon's horizontal recoil is a little bit random, but isn't going to have a huge impact in the grand scheme of things. The recoil angle, on the other hand, will. You're going to have an 11 to 12 degree pull to the left every time you fire. So keep in mind that in order to compensate for the recoil here, you're going to need to pull your mouse down and slightly to the right. Moving on to your ammo stats, you're going to see a 30 round magazine here with a 210 round ammo reserve, and that can be reloaded in 2.25 seconds for a short reload and 2.9 seconds for a long reload. Thankfully, not a huge difference there, and not a bad reload on its own either for the short reload. Wrapping things up, you are greeted by a 0.5 times ADS movement multiplier and a 480 meters per second muzzle velocity. A little bit average there, but hey, what can you do? It's a carbine. So, that there, guys, is the Kindred, and I think I've made it pretty clear as to what my stance is with this weapon, but hey, in case you missed that memo, and I may as well try and convey my feelings of this weapon in the most Australian way I know how, this weapon is a fucking ripper, mate. This is without a doubt a disgustingly brutal weapon in CQC. I mean, come on. The time to kill is faster than that of a cyclone while the weapon is using the accelerated rate of fire. Like, what? However, this is certainly not the easiest weapon to get the maximum amount of potential out of. In close quarters combat, commonly all you need to do is hold down the trigger until you drop your target, because the recoil isn't going to be that big a deal at such shorter range. But with the Kindred, you do need to get yourself out of that mindset, as you need to be bursting the weapon even at CQC to maximize the damage output. But even then, you want to be bursting it at the correct intervals. Bursting every 2 rounds will see you also minimize your damage output. So there's this unique sweet spot that you need to find with this gun when using it, and it makes for a really interesting experience. With that said, however, a 167 damage profile can kill a target in 6 shots, and you have 7 accelerated shots per burst to play with. So in theory, if your aim is on point and you go for those cracking headshots, you may not even need to use a second burst, but it's still good to practice that kind of sweet spot in the VR training room before taking it into combat. Now, some out there may argue that because of this, reliance on bursting, the weapon is designed for a more mid to long range, and there's no question that it could be used at that range, but you do run into some new challenges with ranged firefights here. Don't get me wrong, the weapon is more than capable of dishing out some damage in medium ranges to the point where you might be able to score a kill in a magazine. However, for one, your damage profile drops all the way down to 125 out at 70 meters, which is an incredibly average damage output when the weapon sees itself get down to 550 rounds per minute. At 698, it's not too bad, but still not exactly what I'd call desirable. Thankfully, the 143 damage model hits at the 40 meter mark, so it still gives you that 40 meter range where you're still going to be fairly competent with that damage model, and when you do burst the weapon correctly for the increased rate of fire, it can dish out some fairly devastating damage, but it's not going to be anything special at that extended range. The main problem you are going to run into here though is the beautiful first shot multiplier. As we stated before, here you have a first shot multiplier of 2.5 times, which throws the recoil of all of your first shots of a burst up to around 0.8 degrees, which is less than ideal for a weapon that is going to be firing 698 rounds per minute for a short time after that, and then you're going to be bursting it again to keep the damage running smoothly. While I'm not saying it is impossible to control the weapon at these ranges, it certainly ain't easy, and with that you do typically see an easier time taking advantage of all the weapon's quirks in a closer range engagement. And despite how good this weapon is as a CQC powerhouse, I am going to say something that is probably going to confuse a few of you, and that is, this weapon is not a must buy for everyone. Now, why do I say that? We're talking about a gun here that has a potential time to kill that's faster than a Cyclone. It sounds like every TR's dream come true. Why shouldn't you buy it out the gate? It's simple. This weapon is not easy to use, and while it is powerful, it's only powerful when used in a particular way that resonates with the accelerated fire rate at the start of each burst. If you're someone who is very much heavy on the trigger and embraces their inner Burt a lot of the time, then this weapon may not be for you, because you need to burst it consistently to maximize your damage, and if you're not used to bursting a whole lot, if you just like holding down the trigger and watching rounds fly out into your opponent's face, which, a lot of TR weapons are designed to do, then again, it's not exactly built for you. It demands that you burst even at the closest of scenarios, and being someone who tends to burst their weapons a lot, especially coming from the NC, I found it really easy to use. But making your shots count and timing the burst right here is a must, and if you're very much heavy on the trigger, then it's actually going to be a very severe learning curve to using the weapon effectively. But once you get past that, it's a silly amount of fun. Don't get me wrong, the weapon is stupid fun, it's unique, and I really do like the quirk that was added with the gun. It's just, it's not a pick up and play and be instantly epic with. It's not overpowered, it's just a matter of, learning it and learning the quirk. Once you learn it, then you've got yourself a very competent addition to your armory. But, say you've decided to pick up the gun, what kind of attachment options can we go about adding to improve the general experience with the Kindred? Well, it can mount a 1x to 3.4 times optic, including a 1x RMV sight, a flash suppressor, dark light flashlight, laser sight, forward grip, and the soft point ammunition. So, across the board here, there isn't a whole lot of special in the attachment selection, but there are a couple of things that you can do to give the weapon a little bit more added oomph, if you will. First thing you're going to want to grab is a sight. 1x or 2x is fine, but the 3.4x, despite my best efforts to make it work on the streams, just didn't quite relate too well with the weapon design. When it comes to the rail attachments, I found a bit more success out of the forward grip, as the hipfire was already very competitive with the weapon and didn't really need a buff beyond what it was already rocking. The soft point ammo should also be a high priority here, and your flash suppressor is an option too, but get that one last. It doesn't improve the handling or anything, just get some of that bright muzzle flash out of your face, which is also quite nice. Anyway guys, with all that said, that wraps up today's weapon review of the MG-C1 Kindred carbine available to the Terran Republic. And guys, it was a pleasure reviewing this weapon. I had a lot of fun with it, and I do apologise for how long it took for me to get this review out. Unfortunately, I have been quite sick lately, and I've also been doing a lot of work on getting a community Minecraft server set up. I know it's Minecraft, but hey, people on the Twitch community wanted to see it, and it is public, so anyone who's keen, feel free to join the Discord, and information is in there. On that note guys, if you enjoyed today's video and you're new here, consider backhanding that subscribe button and hitting the notification bell just to ensure that you're notified of any future videos. Feel free to comment in the comment section down below your experience with the Kindred and any tips and tricks that you may have with the weapon. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on that front as well. As per always guys, all my socials are linked in the description down below, and as well in the pinned comment for you guys to go ahead and follow as well. Guys, it was great talking to you again in this video. Hope to see you guys in the next one. Take care guys, peace out, have a good one, catch you in the next one.